I was asked how I approach quad track guitars, so I thought I'd make a video on how I do this technique. If you're unfamiliar with quad track guitars, this basically means recording the same part 4 times and panning hard left and right. It's not as common as double tracking, which is when you record the same part twice and then hard pan left and right. So, what are the pros and cons of quad tracking guitars? Well, the pros are a massive thick guitar sound, so if you're in a guitar-led band, this is obviously massively advantageous. The cons is you have to get every element in time. You can do this in 2 ways, either with the performance when recording, which is difficult to do, or editing to the grid or to the drums, which can be time consuming. So if you're doing this in the studio, be sure to factor in time and budget for this process. I generally would only use quad tracking in parts of the song that need an extra bit of oomph, like choruses, instrumental sections, intros, outros, that sort of thing. Anyway, enough about that. I've got the Pro Tools session open here. Let's dive in. Here we have the Pro Tools session, just to give you a lie of the land. This stuff in green, this is all drums. The kind of purpley pink there, that's bass guitars. And then we've got quad track rhythm guitars and quad track lead guitars. So let's go straight into it. Let's have a little listen to the track. So in the interest of transparency, this is actually a demo track. Big thanks to Crucitrix for letting me use this track for this example. Let's dig into this. The first thing that you're going to need to do is edit everything and get everything nice and tight and in time. What I've done on this track is I've put everything to the grid, because it makes life easier, essentially. If you don't want to do to the grid, which is perfectly fine, I would just edit to the drum, get the drums as in time as you can, as in time as you want them to be. Sometimes it's nice just to have them a little bit out to just give that human feel to it, and then edit to those drums. What I've done is I've put everything to the grid, and then I've edited the bass guitars to the drums, and then obviously the guitars to the drums. So everything is nice and tight and in time. The next step that you're going to want to do is get the transients working together sonically. They need to gel together sonically. I find the best way to do that is to really look at the kick and the snare in particular, and how the transients of the bass and the transients of the guitars work in unison with them. What you're going to really need to do is on the bass guitars, make sure your low end isn't too mushy, which I think is the problem, is how you describe the problem that you're having using this technique. That sounds like a low end issue. So I would look at your bass guitars and your kicks, how the transients are working together, because that low end sort of boxy kind of mushy sound, that's where you're getting that from. Back to the guitars themselves. What I tend to do, one of the great things about having quad guitars is it gives you load bearing options. I've got 2 guitars that are amp sims, and I've got 2 guitars that are recorded using a Mesa Boogie. It's a very basic recording. It's just a 1 SM57 in front of a speaker, basically in front of the cabinet. What I've decided is the amp sim, which I'm using a Diesel VH4, that's going to carry the load of the low end. The Mesas, they're going to carry the load of the top end. The very first thing I do on processing guitars is to do some subtractive EQing. I use a parametric EQ. For that, you can probably, what I've taken out here is some low end rumble there, and that high end, you hear that screeching. And that's horrible. So that needed to go. And then what I tend to go into is a channel strip of some sort. And in this case, I'm using the CLA Mix Hub, which is an emulation of Chris Lord-Alge's SSL. I think it's an E-Series SSL. On here, I'm just doing a bit of filtering, low and high-end filtering, just to lose some rumble and make room for cymbals and hi-hats. I'm boosting around about 150, there, and I'm boosting 1.5K, and I'm boosting just below the 5K mark, and I'm boosting around the 10K mark. I'm not using anything on the compressor on there. I'm not using the compressor at all on there. And then I'm using a noise gate on there just to kind of tighten things up. And then I'm going into a compressor, which is this CLA 3A. It's probably not doing much. The way that I do compression is little and often, if that makes sense. So if you see, it's just barely doing a dB. So it's literally it's gluing stuff together. The thing to remember with high gain guitars is that it's already a compressed signal. That's kind of the process that I'm doing with, and then I've just kind of got a touch of reverb on there just to give it a bit more space. The Messer with the high end, it's going to be a little bit more, but not a huge amount more, because we use the dead space, which you can see the door just over my shoulder there. That's our dead room. Basically, it's heavily soundproofed. So there's not a lot of resonant frequencies in there. It's basically the only resonant frequencies you're going to get is the actual resonation of the cabinet itself, because it's made of wood. All I've done here, that's probably where the snare is. On this one will be a bit of a rumble there to take that out, and that there, that's just not a very nice frequency, so I've taken that out. Again, I'll go into a channel strip, the CLA, filtering again, low and high. I'm boosting around 200 there, a boost just shy, around about 1.5K, a boost around 3K, and then a boost just shy of 5K. Then I'm compressing into the Bluey compressor. Again, not doing a huge amount. It's hitting between -1 and 3. Noise gating that off because it's a recorded sound. And then I'm going into an RS56, which is another EQ, which is an Abbey Road. I think it's a mastering EQ. And that's kind of really pulling up. It gives a really nice warm sound on that high end, because that's where the load's going for this. And the same, the CLA 3A, again, really not doing much, just a -1 dB of compression on that, and it will be the same for the fourth track there. If I was to double track this, I would probably just use... So that would be the double track, obviously the quad track. So it gives it a lot more clarity in the sound, and you're still retaining that punch. Once I've got all of that in, feed all of that stuff into a mix bus. I use the Steven Slate stuff for my mix bus, and this would be the chain for that. Ignore the trimmer, it's not doing anything. Obviously it's there as 0. The same with this, is just set to the SSL setting. This is where I'm doing some transient shaping, probably not a huge amount. You just saw it come up there at the start there. But the great thing about this transient shaper is that you can focus in on a specific range. So that's going, 3K to 10K. It's the same with the sustain, so that's more like 5. So then that's going into another EQ. It's got some filtering, boosted around the 100 hertz. That one's not doing anything. Boost around 3.2, and then a shelf boost there. And then that's going into this compressor here, is the stress compressor, which again really isn't doing much at all. Again, it's literally just a gluing kind of element. So from there, that's then going into some fresh air, Again, not a huge amount, like just really small amounts, just to get it over the line a bit more, I suppose, just to give it a bit more clarity. And then I've widened it just to kind of push it a bit more out in the stereo spread. But again, not a huge amount, just a little bit north of center. It's probably the same sort of thing with the lead guitars. So the lead guitars, again, a bit of transient shaping there. These two, they're really not doing anything, so ignore the trimmer and the virtual mix bus. They're literally just set. So a little bit of transient shaping. Again, it's the same sort of thing, maybe a bit more of a boost on the 3K there and a bit more on the high shelf. Again, this compressor really not doing a huge amount there. It's between 1 and 3 dB. So it's not knocking a lot off. It's literally just there to kind of glue stuff together and give a bit more of a sonic quality to it. And I also like this revival thing for lead guitars. Basically, this just adds a bit more top end, a bit more shimmer is what Stephen Slate call it. And thickness is basically bottom end, and it's just 2 knobs. It sounds great. So, and then that is fed into master bus, which again, obviously I've had to trim that back because you've got quite a lot going into one bus. Give it a chance so we don't blow stuff out. Then that goes into a mastering chain. That's literally, I've done nothing with that at all. That it's literally just passing through there. And the same with the mix down, Chris Lord Alge's mix down. I've done no adjustment on that. I do like to have this kind of set up just to give a bit more of a stereo spread for the overall mix. That's just an EQing dynamic. It just kind of pushes stuff out just that nice, and it's just very subtle. And these other two are just for monitoring purposes. So I know that I'm not overdoing it. This has got 18 dB of headroom on top of hitting over here. This is a nice line. Like that, things are nice. They're progressing nicely. Like I said, this is a demo track. This isn't a full production. So as a demo, I'd be really happy with that. That's essentially it. To sum up, it's just get everything nice and tight with your edits, and then get your transients working sonically, as it were, a nice cohesive sonic sound there. Have clarity above everything else, and just look to see where you can kind of put the workload into certain areas, as opposed to just trying to do everything in one track, as it were, because it's really going to struggle. You're going to really struggle to get the clarity if you're putting everything into one area. Yeah, another option is to send me your track and I'll mix it. I do test mix and masters. I do that for free, and you can get an idea of what I do with your songs. I'll happily do that for you guys. No, that's essentially it. Hope that's helpful, and this isn't too long for everyone. Any questions, anything you want me to go over again, pop them in the comments. I'd love to know. If you do this, let me know. I'd love to hear the results. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.